1. The mission, the death of the human manager. 2. The mechanics, inside the black box boss. 3. The human cost, psychosocial risks, and the erasure of empathy.
Work games and human resistance. 5. System reset. Can we reboot management?
Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right? You pour your coffee, check your phone, and there's a termination notice sitting right in your inbox.
That's a pretty jarring way to start the day.
Yeah, fired. Not by a person, not in some awkward performance review meeting, but literally fired by an automated email that you cannot even reply to. So welcome to the era of the death of the human manager.
It sounds like a dystopian movie, honestly. But for millions of workers out there navigating today's economy, getting hired, evaluated, and fired by a piece of software is just, well, it's just their baseline reality now.
Exactly. So today we are taking a deep dive into algorithmic management. We're looking at what actually happens when your boss is a bot. And to figure this out, we were synthesizing a massive stack of sources today.
We really are.
Yeah.
We've got academic research from the PMC network, stuff from Archive, tech journalism from Tech Monitor and Science Alert.
Plus a YouTube breakdown, a really good Wikipedia overview, and some raw, totally unfiltered experiences from a leaked Reddit thread.
And we're going to use all of that to decode how these algorithms are replacing human bosses, the toll it's taking on workers, and how people are secretly fighting back. But before we get into all that, I want the listener to think about this for a second. How would you feel if a bot evaluated your daily work? Does that sound completely objective and fair to you, or does it sound incredibly isolating?
Keep that in the back of your mind as we go, because honestly, when I look at the sources, especially the International Finance Corporation perspective, I kind of see a marvel of modern logistics. The global capital incentives for this automation are huge.
I mean, the efficiency gains are definitely there, but
They're staggering. Look at the Science Alert article. Uber manages roughly 3.5 million drivers globally. And to oversee that massive workforce, they employ just 22,800 corporate staff.
Yeah.
You just cannot achieve that kind of operational scale with human middle managers.
right, you certainly cannot. But that economy of scale only works because they automate the entire management layer. It relies on prolific surveillance, automated decision-making, and what developers like to call algorithmic nudges.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the word nudge sounds very gentle, like a friendly reminder. What does an algorithmic nudge actually look like on a worker's screen?
Well, it's basically a strategic piece of interface design. It is meant to alter your behavior without giving you a direct order. So it might look like a gamified progress bar showing you are only 3 rides away from a bonus.
Oh, like a video game.
Exactly. Or a flashing color-coded heat map urging you to drive to a busy neighborhood. The algorithm cannot legally force an independent contractor to work, so it uses behavioral psychology to heavily incentivize the outcome the company wants.
See, when I hear about tracking workers and measuring every single second, my mind immediately goes back to the Industrial Revolution. I picture a 1920s factory foreman standing on an assembly line with a clipboard and a stopwatch. Is this just Frederick Taylor's scientific management updated with a smartphone app?
It is actually fundamentally different. Sociologists David Stark and Ivana Pace argue that the 1920s foreman was part of a vertical physical hierarchy. You could see the guy. You knew exactly what he was measuring.
Right, you knew the quota.
Exactly. But algorithmic management operates on what they call twisted accountability. It introduces the concept of the black box.
Meaning the worker cannot see the underlying logic at all.
Precisely. Think of it like playing a video game where the developer is constantly changing the rules, the gravity, and the point system in the background. But you're the one holding the controller, and they never update the interface on your screen. You don't know the benchmarks anymore.
Wow. And that dynamic is laid completely bare in that Reddit thread we looked at from the Uber drivers. They were talking about a major transition the company made. Because for years, they operated on a guaranteed minimum base fare.
Right. They knew the per mile and per minute rate. It was predictable.
But then the platform introduced 2 new features, upfront fares and something called Trip Radar. And it turned the app into this chaotic online auction. A ride request pops up for multiple drivers in the same area all at once, and they literally have to race to tap the screen to accept it.
Which is stressful enough on its own.
But because of the new upfront fares algorithm, the pay isn't a fixed mathematical rate based on distance anymore. It is this totally opaque calculation that just fluctuates wildly.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism powering that auction. That is where the black box really flexes its muscle. A data analytics CEO in our sources explained that ride-hailing platforms run on massive amounts of person-level data. This creates a severe information asymmetry.
Meaning the app knows everything and the driver knows nothing.
Exactly. The algorithm knows your personal driving history, your acceptance rate, your exact real-time location. The driver, meanwhile, has no idea how the algorithm arrived at that specific dollar amount flashing on their screen.
So the algorithm is using that asymmetry to calculate the absolute lowest possible pay it thinks a specific driver will accept in that exact moment.
Yes, that is the mechanical definition of price discrimination. Because the platform has perfect information and the worker has zero, the software can artificially lower the offer for a driver it calculates is, say, more desperate for a fare.
Which is incredibly efficient for the company's bottom line. The IFC report really highlighted how global capital is rewarding this kind of hyper-efficiency. You see it in places like Poland, right?
Yes, the Poland case study was a perfect example of this.
Right, those massive Central European logistics hubs in Warsaw. They're basically the global frontline for this tech. The whole supply chain runs on algorithmic dispatching.
They do. But we have to ask, if the algorithm is this frictionless engine of efficiency for the company, what is the cost for the human being sitting inside that engine?
The psychological toll.
Exactly. The data points to a profound psychological toll. It results in what researchers call managerial erasure.
Yeah, one of the tech articles used the movie Office Space as a comparison, which I thought was brilliant. You know, you have the classic terrible boss, Bill Lumbergh, wandering around asking people to work on Saturday.
Right, yeah.
But as annoying as a human manager can be, a human still possesses what the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau called a natural sense of pity. A human boss can see you have a flat tire or a childcare emergency or notice that you look physically sick. An algorithm just lacks the capacity for context.
It completely erases empathy. And to understand the mechanical damage of that erasure, we have to look at the occupational health research. They use a framework called the Job Demands Resources model.
Okay, wait, so this model treats your job kind of like a bank account. You have demands withdrawing energy and resources depositing energy.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it, yeah. On the withdrawal side, you have job demands. The physical pacing, the unpredictable hours, the emotional stress. On the deposit side, you have job resources, your personal autonomy, your social support from colleagues, your ability to make flexible decisions.
And the algorithm messes with that balance.
Drastically.
Yeah.
It artificially spikes the demands by imposing relentless machine-set pacing while simultaneously stripping away the resources by removing worker autonomy and isolating them from human peers. It's essentially overdrawing the worker's psychological bank account.
I saw that overdrawn account vividly in that 2-year ethnographic study of the Amazon warehouse workers. It was an Architive preprint we reviewed. The metrics those people are subjected to are just intense.
The time-off task metric.
Yes, time off task, or TOT. It tracks the exact seconds between when a worker scans one item and when they scan the next. They call it scan to scan. And we have to remember the sheer physical scale of these environments. These are not small corner store stockrooms.
No, they're the size of 4 football fields.
Right. So imagine you are a worker in one of these facilities. You finish scanning a product, and your scanner immediately starts a silent timer. If you need to walk across that massive building just to use the restroom, or if a conveyor belt jams up ahead of you, that timer is ticking. You are accruing time off task.
And accrue too much of that, and the system generates an automatic warning.
Which can eventually trigger an automatic termination email. The workers in the study noted that their entire existence inside that building is reduced to a units per hour integer just fluctuating on a digital dashboard.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you know, if you're listening to this and thinking this is isolated to logistics and gig driving, well, the trajectory of the technology suggests otherwise.
Oh, for sure. The white-collar world is next.
Exactly. The tech journalism sources illustrate how quickly this management style is bleeding into professional work. They cite recent trials in the UK's National Health Service using wearable technology to track the physical movements and conversational interactions of hospital staff.
Wait, really? They put wearables on medical staff to track how much they walk and talk?
Yes, to map out efficiency bottlenecks. And in remote corporate environments, companies are deploying AI to perform sentiment analysis on employee emails and Slack messages to gauge morale and productivity in real time.
That is wild.
The bot boss is moving from the warehouse floor directly into the corporate inbox. It monitors keyboard activity, application usage, response times, everything.
Faced with a relentless, unfeeling digital boss tracking every keystroke and bathroom break, you would assume the workforce would simply burn out and collapse. But human nature is highly adaptable. People don't just passively accept being treated like nodes in a network.
No, they look for the seams in the software.
Here is where it gets really interesting. When faced with a rigid digital architecture, human workers develop incredibly creative countermeasures. The warehouse study documented this phenomenon extensively. The researchers term it algo activism.
Though the workers themselves just refer to them as tricks.
Right. They have engineered highly specific methods to game the system and just survive their shifts. The ingenuity of these workarounds is actually amazing. Like the first one that caught my eye is called virtual picking.
Ah, yes, because the algorithm expects a worker to walk up and down physical aisles, scanning barcodes on shelves to prove they are moving.
But walking takes time, which lowers their overall units per hour metric, so the workers just bypass the walking entirely. They use the portable printers on their carts to print out duplicates of the aisle and item barcodes.
Oh, wow, they print their own barcodes.
Yeah. They stick these duplicate barcodes right onto their steering carts, so they can stand in one single stationary spot, rapidly scanning the duplicate barcodes to artificially boost their processing rate to a superhuman number. This buys them a buffer of free time later in the shift.
So they are feeding the black box the exact data it demands without performing the physical labor the system is trying to extract.
Exactly. Then there is cherry picking. If the automated dispatch assigns a worker a terrible, inefficient route through the warehouse, the worker will just completely log out of their digital scanner. They sit in silence for exactly 5 minutes.
Because the algorithm assumes the worker's scanner battery died or they just vanished.
Right. And because the order has a strict shipping deadline, the system panics and reassigns that terrible route to a different worker. When the original worker logs back in, the system assigns them a fresh, hopefully easier route.
It is a direct, calculated manipulation of the system's automated dispatch logic.
And the scan-to-scan delay is just pure survival. If a worker is granted a 15-minute break, the algorithm tracks that break from the exact second they scan their last item. So right before the break starts, a worker will gather their next item, prep it for packaging, but purposely withhold the final scan.
They save it for later.
Yeah, they walk away and take their 15 minutes. Upon returning, they immediately scan the item they already prepped. This tricks the computer into calculating that they were working during that transition, effectively reclaiming a few extra minutes of rest.
There is a really deep sociological framework for understanding this behavior. Decades ago, the sociologist Michael Burroway coined the term work games when he was studying traditional factory floors. He observed that workers would create informal games to hit quotas, carving out free time.
Right, making a game out of the grind.
Exactly. And the researchers analyzing the warehouse study point out that we are now seeing modern digital work games. It is a form of active consenting resistance.
Okay, I struggle with that phrase, consenting resistance, because if a worker uses the virtual picking trick to scan items faster than humanly possible, they are artificially inflating their metrics. But ultimately, those packages still get processed and shipped out the door for the company,
They
right?
do.
So if their cheating actually results in a higher processing rate, hasn't the algorithm already won?
You have identified the core paradox of the work game. You are entirely correct that these tricks often produce surplus value for the company. The packages do move faster. However, we had to evaluate the psychological utility of the game for the worker.
How does cheating the system help them psychologically if they're still working just as hard?
Go back to that job demands resources model. The algorithm deliberately strips away autonomy to ensure compliance. Engaging in these tricks, finding a loophole, outsmarting a multi-million-dollar piece of software, is a method of reclaiming self-determination.
It gives them agency.
Yes, it is a vital coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Even if the corporation ultimately benefits from the increased productivity, the act of subverting the rules provides the worker with a sense of psychological safety. It reinforces their identity as a clever human being rather than just a passive extension of the software.
It is rebellion as a survival mechanism, even when the house still wins, which honestly makes the physical toll even more apparent. Like, the saddest trick documented in that study involved workers taking heavy cases of bottled water and stacking them up at their workstations to use as makeshift chairs.
I remember reading that.
The actual break room was physically too far away, and the algorithm would not forgive the walking time required to reach it. So they had to build their own furniture out of warehouse inventory just to rest their legs without triggering a time-off task warning.
It is a stark physical manifestation of the algorithmic squeeze. It forces human beings to repurpose their immediate environment just to meet basic physiological needs, all because the software does not account for fatigue.
So what does this all mean? We have seen the unbelievable scale and efficiency of the technology. We have explored the psychological cost, the managerial erasure, and we have detailed the clever ways people are pushing back. Where do we go from here? Are we just stuck with the bot boss forever, or is a system reset actually possible?
Well, the sources suggest a reset is possible, but it requires deliberate structural intervention. We do not have to let the technology unilaterally dictate the terms of labor. The tech journalism pieces point to a few emerging legal and organizational frameworks.
What do those frameworks look like in practice?
One major avenue is the push for new technology agreements, usually achieved through collective bargaining. Labor organizations are beginning to demand that before a new algorithm is deployed on a floor, its parameters must be negotiated and made transparent.
That makes sense. Take it out of the black box.
Exactly. Furthermore, international regulators are waking up to the risks. The European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act specifically classifies AI systems used in employment and worker management as high risk.
Wait, what does a high-risk classification legally mandate? Does it mean they just cannot use the software at all?
No, they can still use it, but they cannot deploy it in the dark. The high-risk classification mandates comprehensive risk assessments, mandatory data logging, and strict human oversight. The goal many experts advocate for is a hybrid model.
A hybrid model, so keeping the efficiency but adding the human context back in.
Right. We do not have to abandon the logistical efficiency of data processing, but we must reintroduce human judgment into the loop. If a system flags a worker for a drop in metrics, a human manager needs to have the final say, allowing for empathy and a two-way dialogue before any disciplinary action is taken.
We basically have to figure out how to put the human back into human resources. Let the algorithm crunch the routing data, but let a person make the final call on the employee's actual livelihood.
Exactly. But this raises an important question drawn from the historical examples in our text sources. We talk about human managers as if they are the ultimate gold standard of empathy and fairness. But human beings are notoriously biased and flawed.
Oh, that is undeniably true. Human managers play favorites and hold deep prejudices all the time.
Right. And the sources highlight a famous case involving a major tech company, Amazon actually, that attempted to build an automated CV ranking algorithm. They wanted an AI to sort through thousands of resumes to find the best job candidates. To teach the AI what a good candidate looked like, they trained the machine learning model on a decade of their own historical hiring data.
So they fed the bot their own past decisions.
Yes, but because the company's historical hiring data was overwhelmingly male, the algorithm mathematically deduced that male candidates were inherently preferable.
Oh, no.
It actively began penalizing resumes that included the word women's. It downgraded applicants who listed things like women's chess club captain.
So the machine did not invent sexism. It just mathematically optimized the bias it observed in the human data.
Exactly. And that is the ultimate danger we face. If we replace flawed human managers with algorithmic bosses, but we train those algorithms on massive data sets of historical biased human management decisions, are we actually removing the toxic boss?
That is a terrifying thought.
Or are we just hard-coding our worst, most discriminatory human impulses into an impenetrable black box? We risk creating a digital boss that executes our biases perfectly, at scale, and can never ever be fired. Something for you to mull over the next time you log on for work.